Welcome to Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and what makes them do what they do. A wise person once said, unless you're waking up in the middle of the night taking notes on your startup, that's not what you're cut out for. You don't pick your business idea picks you. How does this happen? And what keeps entrepreneurs going back for more?
Money never sleeps, pal.
I'm Pete Townsend, and this is our first episode of Money Never Sleeps. We hope you like it. We're starting with Brian Norton, the co-founder of Future Finance, a wildly successful student loan financing business. An example of Brian's perseverance is the fact that more than 150 investors said no to him before Future Finance raised a $28.4 million Series A round in 2014. After scaling the business, Brian moved out of the CEO role in 2017 and became executive vice chairman of Future Finance and decided to go again. He co-founded Supply Finance this past January, a digital trade finance proposition for SMEs. Hearing this reminded me of when my dad ran the Newport Marathon a few times when I was a kid. The thing was, Newport in the state of Rhode Island is actually a small island. To run the marathon, you need to run around the island 3 times. Brian's now on his second lap of the Entrepreneur's Newport Marathon and knows where all the hills are already, but that won't make things any easier. So with a shout out to the poor righteous teachers, can we start this? All right, guys, welcome to Money Never Sleeps. Brian Norton, thanks for coming on board. You're our first guest on Money Never Sleeps. Welcome.
It is my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. We're here in Dog Patch Labs. I'm Pete Townsend. To my right, I have Owen Fitzgerald. How's it going? Awesome. Brian, thank you again. So what we want to talk to you about today is just to get inside your head a bit and tell us about you and how you got to this point in your life and about your business and why you became an entrepreneur.
Sure.
And the question of why did you become an entrepreneur, I heard something interesting recently, is that you can't learn how to be an entrepreneur, but you can certainly catch it like a virus, right? So maybe tell us a bit about how you got to the point where you said, listen, I'm going to go do this. And when I say this, I'm referring pretty much to your first business that you did.
It's a funny question, I think, because I meet, like you, Pete, and like you, Owen, I meet a lot of entrepreneurs around, and everybody's got a different story and how they came to it. For me, I was this way. The virus, to be not a great way to think about it, but I was this way from an early stage. My first business that I started was in my dorm room, making websites. I was quite fortunate in that my parents were paying for my college tuition, which in the States is a big deal. But I was responsible for walking around money. So I started off as a bike messenger, which was actually really fun. Cambridge, Massachusetts, it's lots of little nooks and crannies, and you can take shortcuts, and you get to know the city and stuff. But in the winter, it sucks, it's a little snowy. And so I thought, I'd been introduced to computers. I started university in 1997. So I think when we arrived, it was the first. We were one of the first classes to sort of have formalized email addresses campus-wide and that sort of thing. It was very early, and so the internet was just coming up. In high school, I'd knocked together some websites like on an AOL sort of UI thing. That was really for my band, actually.
You had a band?
I had a garage band in high school. Yeah.
Drums, guitar.
I was the lead singer, shockingly enough, which I think indicates the overall. Actually, the other guys were very, very good. I sort of dragged them down, but I was as is true as sort of most things, I was the organizer.
Okay.
Right? I was the getter of the gigs, and the sort of the arranger and the pusher. And so anyway, so in university, I realized I could sort of start making websites for money. Now you can do this in Squarespace in 35 seconds, but back then I could charge. So that's basically how I paid for dates and beers. Was D21.net was my first business.
D21.net.
So I lived in Winthrop. D21 was my dorm. So D21.net, obviously, and that was great fun. I did it with one of my roommates, Chess. He was sort of the designer, and I was the programmer. That's how I started to learn programming, and also really where I, properly was an entrepreneur for the first time as a business person. Let's say, sort of trying to get clients. My dad was my biggest client.
Yeah.
As is often the case. He had a PR firm, and I would make websites to associate with his PR campaigns, which back then was like really cool.
Yeah.
It's funny to think about, but it was a big deal. And so it was a nice sort of way for him to not directly pay for my beer money, but sort of help out, and it was good. So from there, I've always been entrepreneurial. I mean, I think I was entrepreneurial prior to that, but that was the first sort of direct expression of it. That business failed. I tried to run it for a year after university and have it be what I did for a living, as my friends all went off to investment banking. That was, I graduated in '01, so just as the internet bubble, the first internet bubble was sort of bursting. And it suddenly became a lot less interesting. All the charts on CNBC were moving the other direction.
Yeah.
You turn on the news in the morning. You remember these times. And so I thought this thing that seemed like a great, cool idea. I had friends in college who were dropping out to do their startups, and they
in
all
2001?
In '99.
Okay.
And they all ended up limping back and finishing their degrees when, it all fell apart. And I was intensely jealous of them. In university, I thought, this is stupid. Why am I going to college? Bill Gates dropped out of college, like that whole thing, right? And thank God that I finished. But anyway, so I joined a client of mine who had a mortgage business in California. I joined his business when I sort of threw in the towel and rolled my thing in with him and got quote unquote a real job. It was still highly entrepreneurial, but that's how I got into finance. It was my first sort of entree into finance and what eventually became fintech.
Gotcha. Okay. And what the buzz that you got out of running that first business?
Yeah.
How did that convert into, okay, I'm going to go into finance from here? There was, you said the business eventually obviously failed.
Yeah.
You decided to do something else. You saw what your friends were doing. How did you carry that over into the corporate world, where it seems like you cut your teeth to be able to prepare to run a couple of financial businesses, right?
Yeah, I think so. I was always interested in real estate. Growing up in Chicago, it's a real estate town. We had some friends around who had done very well in real estate, and it was it was a thing that people did. And so. So these guys in mortgage, it was something that wasn't totally foreign to me, but honestly, it was just kind of per chance. If this guy who was a client, who was a good friend, is now one of my greatest mentors, and eventually we were partners in later businesses, and he's an investor with me, and he's a terrific guy. If he had been in pet food, then maybe I'd be a pet food guy.
Okay.
I don't know. We'd be digitizing pet food together or something. I don't know. But it's just a lucky thing. This is finance, as you guys are terrifically aware, is this massive open space it's the far and away the largest set of markets ever in human history in any sort of measure. And so if you're a clever or hardworking guy, there's just lots to be done. So it's sort of a blessing that I managed to get in, and from an early age get a real education, both in the nuts and bolts of practical application of finance in customers' lives. Like the mortgage stuff we were doing was very, highly interactive. It wasn't abstract. And at the same time, working in entrepreneurial firms, from a very early stage, realizing that you can, in this big, scary world with banks stomping around, if you're quick and clever, you can build good businesses and make change, which from the outside isn't necessarily obvious. So having a front row seat with these guys, watching them do this, think, wow, this is doable. You can make stuff happen. So it's a lucky break, I think.
What do you mentioned quick and clever, right? What do you think beyond quick and clever you need, and what personality traits have you kind of leaned on over the years?
So I think the personality trait that has interestingly served me sort of best and worst is oftentimes it's the same sort of two sides of the same coin, is and certainly was sort of inspired by people who I met along the way, is sort of a pretty heavy independence. And I think it's particularly useful in finance, which is dominated, in my humble opinion, there's the inertia factor around financiers, that this is the way we've always done it, this is the way it's always gone, is astounding. And I think we can get into why that is. There are probably some good reasons behind it, like stability and trust, and there's a reason banks put those things on their logos, because it matters in this world, maybe more so than in other industries. But the independent streak, I think the independent streak in me, and again, some natural and some gifted from people I've spent time with, it gives you the confidence to say, well, that's fine that that's how you've always done it, but that doesn't mean we have to keep doing it that way. At the same time, the independence means that you somehow there's an overconfidence can creep in certain circumstances, and also for me the independence, I think, leads me to often. It's a gift, but the curse element of it is you end up trying to solve too many things yourself, and somehow, in some cases, standing on the shoulders of others might be much more efficient than trying to sort of hack it away from day one. So try to learn from that as we go. But I think that's the thing in finance. If you can find somebody who's got a good enough head on their shoulders to sort of be able to do the math. This is a math business. Yeah. But then also sort of the confidence to say, hey, I've done the math and there's a better way to do it. And then the guts to go and do it. I think anybody you're going to end up interviewing on this show, if you kind of they're going to have some combination of those three. Like if there's a commonality from the people I know, those are sort of the bits. And I think I'm foursquare in that camp.
And is there a challenge then? I suppose, you build a business, it's your business, and then trying to step back from it and letting other people take on a lot of that work. And trying to identify the right person. I know obviously we've worked together, I've worked for you, your energy drives so much of it, but I suppose when you're absent then doing all of the other parts of it, or even out of the office, is it hard then to identify the right people to give that kind of control over to, or that piece of what you're doing, given you're talking about the independence and that?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, Owen, you were one of our
front
best
row
guys.
Seats.
Front row seat, one of our best guys at Future Finances. We were building that up here in Dublin, starting from 2014. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that is, for me personally, that is one of my biggest challenges is the letting go, to make it sort of trite, but it's a real thing. I'm dealing with it now. This new business I've started called Supply Finance, which is a trade finance business, which we can get into. Is we're just beginning to hire employees, and we're just beginning to sort of take the nice concepts from the pitch book and turn them into reality, and figuring out ways to parcel out things that have been completely, driven by my co-founder and me from a concept thing, and make them real, and sort of where can you delegate, where can you hand things off and feel confident they'll be done well, is for me the hardest part. I look at guys who do that artfully and gracefully and almost effortlessly, and I am in awe, because it's just not my personality. I think it's a blessing. I think the fact that I take this stuff so personally and can own and control and have a real grasp on things makes me very, very effective in certain circumstances. But that ability to and so you saw this at Future Finance. So you it takes time. As you know, I handed off leadership of Future Finance in total to a new group of guys in the beginning of 2017. And that was tough. That's sort of the most extreme example.
It's like giving away one of your kids or something.
To a large extent. And so it is a challenge. And I think for me personally, it's something that is I'm constantly self-coaching on trying to figure out how to get this balance better. How do you do that? Better.
How do you coach yourself?
Oh, geez. It's mostly like a what's the Larry David show? It's like a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode, where you're just sort of just beating yourself up and giving out and bitching and moaning and whining
to yourself.
You walk around the airport, and then all it takes is sending a 3-line email and solved, but it takes, for me, I stress over these things for days, and I wrestle, and I this, and I that. And then you send the email, you feel this load come off. You're like, why was that so hard? Why didn't I just do that? Why did I have to lose sleep over this?
Do you ever yell at yourself in the mirror to get yourself fired up?
I am not one of those guys. I am not one of those guys personally. It's more of a quiet. So look, I'm from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
And so we're not yellers. We are Irish, Germanic, sort of stock. We have healthy doses of self-doubt. We like self-deprecating humor.
Yeah.
We are deeply passive-aggressive. So we don't yell at each other. We just say, "Oh, that's nice," and then everyone knows what that means, you know. So I sort of am like in that sort of, "Oh, okay, that sounds great," you know, sort of like. But then so it's not a yell in the mirror. It's more of a heavy sigh and. The emails in the inbox that you have to deal with, and you just there's some you deal with straight away, and some you have to sort of wrestle with and let the answer come when it does after some.
And have you got people then that you lean on, or is it very much a personal, introspective kind of thing?
So I think the person who I lean on the most is my wife. I'm very fortunate to have a great partnership with Marla, and one that is always evolving as well. So with this new business, she and I are, along with a fellow called Jay Vergy in London, are essentially co-founders for the business. As you know, Owen, with our the work we've done together with the good folks at Enterprise Ireland, Marla's helping with all that very useful and important paperwork that we have to put together over there. So she's actually sort of helping and with the business itself. But that, I think, was an evolution for us. So she's always been a terrific support on the personal side, and sort of building up and then gently taking down when necessary, and reality checks and sense checks. Being an entrepreneur with a family, I've got a 6-year-old boy called Sebastian and a 2-year-old called Max, and doing what we do when the responsibilities grow. I mean, I have some wonderful friends who are in their late 20s and doing this, and they're single, and then it's quite a different ball game. And she's been very, 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 very helpful and supportive in terms of helping me get my arms around the right way to try to be a good dad, and also continue to do what I do for a living. But now with this business, it's actually great because now she's actually someone I can lean on and get support from for actual business stuff, which is a really neat sort of evolution that we've gone through with this recent turn. It was actually a specific effort that we made to sort of say, how can we be closer on this stuff and support each other in the what is, no matter how good at this you are, is a hard thing. And it's a thing that in fact impacts not only your business life and business relationships, et cetera, but also your personal life too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, was that, if what would you do differently, or what are you doing differently this time around, right? But it sounds like you kind of already pointed to it by having her involved.
Yeah, and away from the how is this business model different? I think I've done some I think we found some clever hacks, and I think I'm sort of getting smarter about how to build a fintech startup in today's world. So we have made real differences with this new business, but from a life version 2, that is the big change for us, is sort of realizing that sharing the business work that I'm doing with her makes us closer. And the big challenge for me was trust that she would be able to handle the ups and downs. I mean, it's been fun doing this with Marla because I sort of see the entrepreneurial thing again for the first time. Because for me, I've been doing this so long, you talk to an investor, the investor says, we're not doing it. It's like, okay, and then I would tell her, my fear was I would tell her and she would go to pieces. Oh, they're not going to do it. Oh, we're screwed. Da, 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 da. And which was my reaction when the first time I did this. I thought, you get so wrapped up in this one meeting and this one guy, and it's going to be the ticket to all my life's dreams. And he says no, and you're shattered, right? And she's tougher than I am about a lot of this stuff.
Totally. I've had the same experience, right? With my wife, Lisa, and that she has been, as I started my business nearly 2 years ago now, I expected kind of the same reaction that I would have had from her when I told her about stuff that was going on in the corporate world, where it's like, just give me some feedback. But now that I bounce things off her from an entrepreneurial perspective, she's a much better read on people and situations than I'll ever be.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
so it's really valuable to me.
It's great, and it's honestly, I'm quite sheepish, and I mean, she's terrific, but she does not hesitate to give me a hard time, obviously. I'm quite sheepish that we hadn't been doing this earlier, and she's sort of like knocking me in the head saying, I told you so, and which, fair enough, so here we are. So that's, I think, the big, and it's a big change, and it's made things a lot, honestly, it's a lot better, and it's a lot more fun for me. It's a lot more fun. It's much less of a weight that I have to carry, and it's something that we can work on together.
I think as well, it's obviously in a situation like this where this is your business, it's very different to a job that you just switch off and go home. There's less personal attachment to it, and in terms of having your partner involved or anything, but this is your life, and obviously the decision to go again, build a second company, you needed kind of her buy-in, I suppose, or her support on that, which you would have had anyway, but it's not just a typical job, I suppose. It's 24/7.
You got it. It's actually, I think it's something I observe. I advise some early stage businesses, some really terrific guys working on interesting things, and then talk to a very broad number of people. And I think this is one thing that first-time entrepreneurs actually wrestle with, is this: how am I supposed to be? Am I supposed to work 20 hours a day? Because I could now, unlike in my old job where maybe even if I wanted to, there wasn't 20 hours of work to do in a day. I could actually work 20 hours. Am I supposed to ignore all my friends, or am I supposed to find a balance? And how do I weigh the different costs and benefits between those things? I think, in my experience, that's something that I am still not great at, but that's one thing that I think I've really learned how to do differently. And some of it's just silly hacks, right? Like this thing with Marla is kind of a hack. It's sort of fine, just come. I don't have time to talk to you about all the stuff that normal couples probably spend their weekends talking about, but at least we can talk about this. At least we're talking and we're doing stuff. And some of my very good friends are investors in the business, in supply, which again, we talk a lot more now, which is a nice sort of benefit. So it's like bringing in the people who are close to you. If you know you're going to be spending sort of all your time doing this thing, you might as well do it with people you like and people you want to have around, and get sort of a double dip to some extent of, it's I can speak with my friend Grant, and we'll talk for half an hour, and we'll talk for 15 minutes about supply, because he's an investor, he's a board observer, and we talk about the business, and he's a really helpful guy. And then we talk 15 minutes about BSing about his golf game or whatever. So we get both, but it's a nice, so it's a useful way to maintain some connection. So I'm evolving these sorts of things and trying different stuff, but I don't know if I would have had the confidence to take those steps early on. I think for me early on, I thought I had to be very serious about everything.
Yeah.
Like very serious, very, very always, and the reality is, people do this differently, but my take is like, you gotta be, you got to be a real human being about these things.
Yeah.
And I try to Future Finance to sort of let some amount of humanity always try to show, like, just to be direct and honest about, this one was easy, this one's pretty hard.
Yeah.
We'll get through it. But, versus imagining you have all the answers and everything is always perfect. It's a great way to give yourself an ulcer if you try to keep that facade going.
And I think even on that, from an employee point, when we were in Future Finance, that kind of openness with, that sometimes we didn't have the answer or we were working through it together, there was a real sense of family to that place, which was great. And it came from the way you approached it and giving everyone that exposure to it. And, everyone bought in, and it's a real kind of something I took away from it in terms of, how I like to work and working with people again.
Yeah.
So.
And it is kind of like a family. I as you do, I keep in touch with a lot of guys from there. It's awesome to see people growing and going off and starting their own businesses now, hopefully in small part inspired by some of what we all did together. And there's a great warmth that comes from it, which, if you show up as the guy who has all the answers and who's just there to, run the business and you do your job, you don't get that connection. And for me, life's too short to show up every day. And I think, I'll tell you one thing I often joke about from an entrepreneurial standpoint is, like, this blows my mind. I meet entrepreneurs sometimes who have a long commute. You ever encounter this?
No.
And yeah, I do. And I think, well, that's crazy. Like, because you pick where you live we all make choices for different reasons, but you live where you live. And then there are a lot of difficult things about being an entrepreneur, but the benefits some of the clear benefits are you get to make some of these choices. You can choose where the frickin' office is. So if you set yourself up to have a 45-minute commute every day on like a tube in London, and that's what you've like, you feel like you missed the point here to some extent. Like you're supposed to try to take things and make them a little bit, take the benefits that are offered by this. You're making your life a lot harder. So you might as well find, use you could. So, and I think this the way you show up at work for me is one of those things as well. Is like people I don't think necessarily expect early stage entrepreneurs especially to show up as dudes suited and booted, with their like briefcase.
No, you got to be yourself, right?
Yeah,
you got to be yourself. And what I found is that creates this authenticity to your own character that people just associate with, right? And that they want to get to know you better. And you get into those personal moments with the people that you're working with where you do start to see a few tears in the eyes well up every now and again when you know you're really connected with somebody.
That's right.
Have you had any of those moments that really changed kind of the direction for you as you've gone through the years? Where you had some type of personal connection where it said, oh, Jesus, yes, this is right. This is the right way to do things.
Yeah. Actually, I have sort of in a negative sense, I think, as on the positive side, it's, for me, thinking about it as you ask, it's 1,000 little things where you actually see the light bulb go off with somebody.
Yeah.
Or you see somebody who showed up at your doorstep, very clever, like as an employee or a partner, very, very clever, very, very, well educated and well pedigreed, but a little bit listless. And then you see them 2 months into the job as the last person in the office, shutting off the lights when they go.
Yeah.
You think, okay, so we've somehow turn something on in this guy or gal's ethos that just, for me, I mean, it's obviously good for the business that the people are working hard and all that, but more it's like I like it because it's like we've made some things happen for that person that hopefully a spark that doesn't die.
Yep.
On the negative side, I've had to lay people off a couple of times.
Yeah.
And that's when you take this approach, you're making friends with people and it's a big family. It makes those moments that are absolute business necessities just brutal to a different degree. And the lessons are varied depending on situation, et cetera. But like the responsibility that you have as an entrepreneur to your employees, I think it's a different kind of responsibility versus a well-trained and highly effective and compassionate management role at an enterprise where you're sort of, we're all in this together, but there's a small degree of it's all of us versus them, and them is like the corporation, and I gotta let some of you guys go, and it wasn't my call, and those bastards, and man, when it's not
you, it's them,
right? But when it's a small entrepreneurial business, like it's that you don't have that sort of easy get out of jail free card. You can blame investors or whatever, but like it's singles tennis out there, like it's not. So those moments, and I think the takeaway from me there is probably just a real, you say to yourself, we are never doing this again, and then you screw something else up and you kind of end up in the same situation. You say, well, okay, let's really not make this same mistake. There are so many mistakes that will be made. You just try not to make the same ones, and because it has people's lives, and they've given so much. They give so much to the business. They take the risk to come to a small business in the first place, which people like you came to us from. Yeah. AIB, right? You get a stable job. You could AIB. You could work the rest of your life, and so, geez, these people took a risk, and there's a response. The responsibility burden is different and heavy, and wonderful. People took the trust, and it's very inspiring, But it's also like you're a great caretaker of people's lives in a sort of a daunting way.
Yeah.
Which again comes back to the point about sort of being open and honest with people. Like, geez, that's the least that you can give them if they've sort of come on this journey. So you might as well tell them what's actually going on.
Absolutely.
and let them sort of be grown-ups with you in the experience.
What do you think is one thing people don't know about you, or that they wouldn't expect about you? I love Lego, man. I look at the world and I see blocks of Lego.
Great. So I hesitate to answer because I like to imagine that I'm a pretty open guy, like I'm not we did the press release about supply finance. We put all the numbers in there. Like I sort of tend to be like, the secrecy, the value for secrecy I don't see as many people feel like they should be secret about these things. Again, based on experiences, it's better to just show up as an open person. But of course there are things I think. So I also am a huge Lego guy. Yeah. My fantasy business I would like to start, which has a user base of one, me, maybe you as well, Pete. Count you in, is an app where so we have all the Lego in the world now, right?
Yeah.
We're 6-year-old, we're sort of overbossed.
Same with us.
Lego, right? And when Sebastian takes out the instruction book for the fire truck that we got 2 years ago, right, and the pieces are scattered to the wind, right? He said, let's build this again.
Yeah.
It's like it's 3 hours of me, usually late at night, looking for the damn pieces, and then half an hour of him like knocking the thing together, right?
Yeah.
So it's like how do we? So my rough idea. This is like some AI and some machine learning and whatever, right? Is you take all your Lego pieces, you scatter them around the floor, right? And then you take a series of photographs and then you upload the instructions, right? With the list of pieces.
Yeah.
And then the thing, you don't move anything. And the thing's like, okay, go to quadrant 2A. And there's the green one
goggles.
with you get the goggles.
The AR
You
goggles.
put the goggles on and you scan around. They're like bing, 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 bing.
I've actually seen like those AR goggles for surgeons to wear.
This is what I mean.
So they know how where to cut the spleen,
Right.
or for a mechanic when they're fixing a car. Right. We'll do that for Lego.
Yeah, no, see, this I think could work. I think it's a...
The amount of parents that would buy that, I mean,
I think, honestly,
it's huge,
like
huge market.
time value of money, right?
Yeah.
You could sell this app for $1,000.
Totally. All right.
And I would buy it for $1,000. But it's honestly, it is hours and hours of... My wife, who is... I'm type A, she is type AAA, right? We have this like an intricate Lego library storage system that requires this constant, the pieces that are like this, the pieces that are like that, whatever. Mostly just our cheap way to try to solve this thing, but man, it is a problem ripe for a solution, Pete. Let's find this guy. Let's do this thing.
This will be number 3, right?
I mean, maybe $10,000 for the app. I mean, it's a big number, because it's like how many hours? They got to get maybe a small user base, or maybe, yeah. But anyway, so
okay.
All right.
I think we got to wrap up there.
Yeah.
But,
Brian, thank you for coming on.
Yes, absolutely.
It's been a pleasure having you. I'm glad we got into this. And
Can I ask you guys a question?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I know where it comes from, but where does the name for the podcast come from?
Well, we were
go
discussing
ahead,
this, so I suppose I kind of pitched this to Pete as a kindred spirit, I suppose. So much of what I do, obviously I've got 5 kids, they're 11 down to 2. I probably haven't slept properly in about 12 years, I'd say. 3 or 4 hours sleep for me is...
Pretty good.
Pretty good if I get that, so technically I'm never asleep. But I'm so, to me, I'm so interested in this stuff, and, I read stuff at night, I'm watching TV programs, I'm kind of consuming as much as I can, and I'm generally doing it at times when most people are asleep.
Yes. But showing my age here, money never sleeps, specifically the phrase.
yeah. That came out of... That was a Wall Street Part 2.
Yeah,
right?
Wall Street
Wasn't
1.
it?
Wall Street 1. Gordon Gekko,
Yes,
on the beach, on his cell phone, calls Bud Fox, wakes
okay.
him up,
Yeah.
and Bud Fox, groggy, this and that, and Gordon Gekko says, money never sleeps, buddy, time to get to work.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that was the name of the podcast before you said it just now.
Yeah.
This
great.
is episode 1, version
Yeah.
1.
Yeah.
And put a huge smile on my face, because it is like I go around saying that to people.
Totally.
Yeah,
Money never
and
sleeps,
that was
man.
it.
But let's. The one thing I would advise you guys is pepper in as many Wall Street references to your future podcasts as you possibly can.
Yeah.
I will be listening for them.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
I got
Like
another
Easter
one coming
eggs.
up. Cover that on the next one. Cool.
Listen, thank you so much for being on.
Thanks,
Cheers,
Brian.
guys.
Pleasure.
Fantastic. Thank you
Great,
so much.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank Brian for opening up his mind for the first episode of Money Never Sleeps, a podcast brought to you by Owen Fitzgerald and me, Pete Townsend. We'd also like to thank Gav Timlin and Conan Brophy from Create Sound for recording and editing this podcast. Finally, thanks to Dogpatch Labs for hosting us and for their unwavering support of the startup community in Dublin.